On February 24, 2009, a pedestrian walking along the IJmuiden waterway near Zeedijk, outside Amsterdam, noticed something disturbing floating near the shoreline. What appeared to be refuse bags bobbing in the water turned out to contain human remains, body parts that had been dismembered with a chainsaw or hacksaw, packed into suitcases and plastic bags, and dumped in a location chosen specifically to delay discovery. It would take weeks of forensic analysis, DNA testing, and cooperation between Irish and Dutch authorities to confirm the victim's identity. Keith Ennis, a 29-year-old Irish drug and firearms dealer who had fled Dublin while on bail, relocated to the Netherlands, and been brutally murdered inside a Rotterdam apartment shared with 3 other Irish criminals. His body bore multiple stab wounds to the head, face, neck, and back. His head had been severed and placed in a suitcase, and the men accused of killing him would claim it was self-defense during an argument, a claim that would unravel through years of trials, appeals, and international extradition battles. This is the story of a mid-level Dublin criminal who became an informant or was believed to have become one, and how that suspicion followed him across Europe to a killing that Dutch courts would eventually characterize as brutal, cruel, and calculated. Keith Ennis was 29 years old when he died. To those who knew him outside the criminal underworld, he was a father of 1, a young man from the Clondalkin and Walkinstown areas of Dublin. But to Garda Síochána, Ireland's national police, Ennis represented something far more significant, a mid-level operator within Dublin's organised crime networks, a suspected cocaine and firearms dealer whose name appeared repeatedly in intelligence reports linking him to Kinahan-associated figures. For years, Ennis had navigated Dublin's criminal landscape with relative success. He dealt in 2 of the underworld's most profitable commodities, cocaine and guns. His connections ran deep enough to access serious weight, kilogram quantities of powder, loaded firearms, ammunition in bulk. Yet he remained careful, professional, avoiding the flamboyance that drew unwanted police attention. He was a dealer, not a gangster, a businessman in an extraordinarily violent business. But in October 2007, that carefully maintained balance collapsed. The raid came without warning. Ennis was arrested during a major operation targeting Dublin's drug networks, found carrying between 20 and 23,000 euros in cash, the kind of money that raises immediate red flags. At his home, officers recovered a loaded 9mm Glock handgun and approximately 3,000 euros worth of cocaine. Significant, but not extraordinary. The real discovery came elsewhere, at Associated Properties and a warehouse linked to the operation. 4 additional firearms, ammunition, 9 kilograms of cocaine with an estimated street value approaching €500,000, cannabis, and more cash. The scale of the seizure suggested something far beyond individual dealing. This was infrastructure, supply-level inventory indicating connections to importation networks and distribution hierarchies. Ennis was charged and released on bail. From this moment on, he wasn't just under investigation, he was under suspicion. Within Dublin's criminal circles, rumours spread with lethal velocity. Associates within Ennis's network believed he had provided information to police that led directly to the seizures. A cocaine mixing factory had been uncovered, a major weapons stash compromised. The timeline felt too convenient, the busts too precise. There was no official confirmation that Keith Ennis had turned informant. Police neither confirmed nor denied the speculation. But in the world Ennis inhabited, official confirmation was irrelevant. And in that world, suspicion kills faster than proof. Multiple sources would later confirm that Ennis himself believed his life was in danger. Whether he had actually cooperated with police became secondary to the fact that powerful people believed he had. The mathematics of survival were brutally simple. Stay and face retaliation, or run and hope distance could buy time. While still on bail, facing serious charges and growing threats, Ennis made the choice that countless Irish criminals before him had made when the walls closed in. He vanished. Late 2007, Keith Ennis jumped bail and fled Ireland, initially heading to Spain, a traditional refuge for Irish criminals seeking distance from Garda jurisdiction. But Spain offered only temporary sanctuary. He soon relocated to the Netherlands, settling into Rotterdam and Amsterdam, embedding himself within the established Irish-Dutch trafficking corridors that funneled cocaine from European ports into Ireland and the United Kingdom. The Netherlands represented ideal terrain for someone in Ennis's position. Amsterdam's transport infrastructure, its role as a major European drug hub, and its thriving nightlife economy provided both cover and opportunity. Irish criminals had established significant presence there, creating networks that facilitated everything from importation to money laundering. But exile changes a man in ways that aren't immediately visible. Ennis rented a flat in Rotterdam, maintained his contacts, continued dealing cocaine. To observers, he appeared to be adapting, yet beneath the surface, the isolation was profound. No family nearby, no childhood friends to trust implicitly. Every conversation carried risk. Every new associate might be the one who recognized his name from the wrong circles. He was a father who couldn't see his child, a Dubliner living among strangers, a dealer operating in a market where he understood the product, but not always the people, and he was running out of money. According to Dutch investigative reporting, Ennis attempted something that would prove catastrophic, establishing an independent drug operation with associates identified in court documents as Antho and Nathan. The exact nature of this venture remains murky, but the allegations were serious. Ennis had allegedly stolen or diverted a significant drug shipment meant for Irish partners. In the criminal economy, such actions represent existential threats. Trust is currency, and betrayal, real or perceived, demands violent correction. If Ennis had indeed intercepted a shipment belonging to his former network, he hadn't just committed theft, he'd declared independence from the very people who already suspected him of being an informant. The dual accusations created a deadly convergence, informant and thief, betrayer on two fronts. By early February 2009, Keith Ennis was living in Rotterdam, sharing an apartment with three other Irish men: Philip County from Portarlington and Lucan, Kenneth Brunel from Palmerstown, and Barry McArdle from Drimna. All three had their own criminal backgrounds. All three had connections to Dublin's underworld. Whether Ennis understood the danger of his living situation remains unknown. Perhaps he believed shared nationality created safety. Perhaps he had no better options. Perhaps he simply miscalculated how far the reach of Dublin's grudges extended. That miscalculation would cost him everything. February 2009. The exact date remains disputed, but the location is established: the Rotterdam apartment shared by Ennis, County, Brunel, and McArdle. What triggered the violence that night may never be fully known. Philip County would later claim he'd been out shopping when an argument erupted inside the flat, a dispute that escalated when Ennis allegedly attempted to stab Barry McArdle. In County's telling, Brunel and McArdle acted in self-defense, stabbing Ennis to stop his attack. This account was contested by his co-accused and never definitively proven in court. What is certain, Keith Ennis was killed inside that apartment through extreme violence. He suffered multiple stab wounds to his head, face, neck, and back. Fatal injuries to his upper body that Dutch prosecutors would later describe as brutal and cruel. This wasn't a single defensive strike. This was sustained, deliberate violence executed by men who had made a decision. And when it was over, three men faced a choice that would define the rest of their lives: how to dispose of a body in a foreign country where police cooperation between nations had become increasingly sophisticated. They chose dismemberment. Using either a chainsaw or hacksaw, tools later recovered by investigators, the men methodically dismembered Keith Ennis's body. His head was severed and placed inside a suitcase. The remaining body parts were packed into black refuse bags and additional luggage. The work was deliberate, clinical. Each cut represented not just physical labor, but psychological commitment to the irreversible. Forensic evidence would later reveal a chainsaw without its blade inside the Rotterdam flat, bearing DNA traces from both Ennis and Barry McArdle, physical proof connecting McArdle directly to the dismemberment process. The disposal site was chosen with calculation. The IJmé, a body of water near Dimazedijk outside Amsterdam, offered depth and relative seclusion. The bags were weighted and dumped, intended to sink and remain hidden indefinitely. For nearly 3 weeks, the plan worked. 3 men returned to their routines. The apartment was cleaned. Life, superficially, continued. But water keeps no secrets permanently. February 24, 2009. The discovery by a jogger triggered an immediate response from Dutch authorities. Initial uncertainty about whether the remains were even human gave way to grim confirmation. This was a homicide, and the dismemberment suggested organized criminal involvement. Identification took weeks. DNA analysis, fingerprint comparison, and ultimately a distinctive tattoo on the recovered remains allowed investigators to confirm what Irish police had already begun to suspect. Keith Ennis, wanted in Ireland, suspected informant, fugitive drug dealer, had been murdered in the Netherlands. The investigation became a joint Irish-Dutch operation, with Garda Síochána working alongside Dutch police through Interpol channels. The case was immediately classified as a calculated gangland execution, part of the expanding pattern of Irish criminal violence spilling across European borders. As evidence accumulated, witness statements, phone records, forensic traces inside the Rotterdam apartment, the scope of the conspiracy became apparent. 3 men had been present. 3 men had participated in either the killing or the disposal, and all 3 had fled. Over the following years, authorities would work methodically to bring each of them to justice. Philip County, the first to face legal consequences, admitted his role in disposing of Ennis's body, but failed to attend his trial. He was acquitted of murder, but convicted of body disposal. Reports later suggested he had fled abroad, possibly to Brazil, remaining beyond the reach of European authorities to this day. Kenneth Brunel was extradited in 2014. His trial in 2017 initially resulted in acquittal on murder charges, though he was convicted of body disposal. However, on appeal, prosecutors successfully argued for a manslaughter conviction. Brunel received a 13-year sentence and remains imprisoned in the Netherlands. Barry McArdle faced the longest legal journey. Also extradited in 2014, he was initially acquitted of murder, but convicted of disposing of the body. In 2018, appellate judges overturned that verdict, convicting him of manslaughter and imposing a 13-year sentence. His arrest in Ireland had initially been ruled invalid due to warrant irregularities, but McArdle ultimately surrendered voluntarily in 2020. He is currently serving his sentence in Dutch custody. 3 potential motives emerged throughout the investigation, none ever definitively proven in court. First, gang punishment for informing. If Ennis had indeed cooperated with Gardaí following his 2007 arrest, his execution would represent enforcement of underworld codes. The price of betrayal paid in blood. Second, business conflict. If Ennis had stolen or diverted a drug shipment from Irish partners, his death would constitute retaliation for financial betrayal within the trafficking network. Third, the immediate trigger. The violent argument inside the Rotterdam apartment, whatever its cause, may have been the spark that transformed underlying tensions into lethal violence. The truth likely incorporates elements of all 3. Ennis was a marked man before he ever set foot in that Rotterdam flat. The question was never whether violence would find him, but when and at whose hands. The murder of Keith Ennis illustrates a fundamental evolution in Irish organised crime. No longer confined to Dublin's streets, gangland violence had become genuinely transnational. The same feuds that produced bodies in Coolock and Crumlin were now generating corpses in Rotterdam and Amsterdam. The Netherlands had become more than a drug transit point. It served as both operational base and killing ground, a place where Irish criminals conducted business, settled scores, and disposed of enemies far from Irish jurisdiction. For Dutch authorities, the case highlighted the challenges of policing international criminal networks, where violence, loyalty, and commerce operated by rules foreign to statutory law. For the Ennis family, the loss was personal and permanent. A father was gone, a son was dead. The circumstances of his death, the brutality, the dismemberment, the calculated disposal, added layers of trauma to an already incomprehensible loss.